All right, hello everybody. This is Brian and Leslie Fatheree with the Unbreakable podcast. That's right, the Unbreakable podcast. We really greet you in the name of the Lord. Good to see you.
Yes.
Good to have you hear us. If you've not seen us, because you're on the podcast.
Yep.
Those of you on YouTube, glad that we get to see you and talk to you. We have been all month. The month of August is back to school month, and so we've been talking about homeschooling. We talked about the first week about why we chose homeschooling. The second week, why we thought you should choose homeschooling.
Right.
Now we're going to get a little bit more into the nuts and bolts, nitty gritty of homeschooling for the next 2 weeks. So this week we're going to talk about the challenges of homeschooling, and we're going to wrap up the month with the benefits, which we think are many and tremendous. But we won't get ahead of ourselves just yet. We're going to talk about the challenges of homeschooling. And so we want to address those because when we talk to people about homeschooling, especially when people talk to Leslie, because she's the main educator in our home, because she was one that was mostly at home doing the education while I was working and doing other things. I was part of it, but she was really the person teaching the children. And so a lot of people come to her and ask her questions. We just had an open house party for my birthday. Yay, last week, yay. And if you want to send a gift, I'll let you do it, but it's okay. Anyway, just playing. Anyway, we had some folks that come and go, and we had a young couple that came that are friends of ours, and they're considering homeschooling.
Yes.
So they were asking Leslie lots and lots of questions. And one of the questions people ask about is the challenges, the things that are not easy about homeschooling. So we want to just address some of that and go from there. So this episode might actually end up being called the Leslie episode. No, I'm just playing. I'm sure she'll say more than I will. I'll give my half cents worth as we go through. Hopefully it'll multiply to 2 cents worth by the time we're done.
Yes. She has a lot of good things to say. Anyway.
So, go ahead.
All
Why don't you
right.
start out?
Well, first of all, anything that is worth doing is going to probably have some challenges and have to have some work put into it. So just starting from that jump off point, homeschooling is gobs and gobs and gobs of fun, but it is also it's got challenges and it's hard work, and you have to put into it so that you can get out of it. And the more you put into it, the better you put into it, the better the results will be coming.
Just like anything else.
Yes, just like anything else. So first of all, what I wanted to mention was that sometimes the challenge you have is your own commitment level. Your commitment level will either make it or break it.
Yeah.
When we started homeschooling, we jumped in 2 feet all the way, fully up to our neck in, we're going to do this.
We did a cannonball dive. Here we come.
We were totally in. We, from the beginning, we're not going to be deterred off of homeschooling. It was our commitment. We were committed to it from the very beginning, and to be committed to it all the way to the end.
Yeah.
Now, we did succeed at that, but throughout the years, we did have to remind ourselves every once in a while there would be a challenging year, or it would be a really difficult season.
Yeah.
And we're like, hey, are we going to keep doing this? Yes, we are. And we would recommit and stick to our guns all the way through to the end. We wanted to see our children graduate from their school experience from home. We wanted them to have all of the benefits of being at home. So we were very committed to it. Now, on the flip side of that, I have seen people who they start committed, they're all about it, but if they start listening to all the fears and worries and things that the enemy throws at them, and he will do that because he wants your children. He doesn't want you to have your children. That if they start listening to those things, their commitment will wane, and then it finally just drops off and they give up and they go, oh, just send them back to public school. Well, you can do that. That's your choice. But honestly, the biggest benefits are reaped from being consistent and committed to doing the task before you.
Yeah.
God told us we were supposed to homeschool our children. So in our minds, that didn't stop till we were all the way done.
Yeah. Or unless he gave us release, and that just
right,
never
and he just
happened.
never gave us release.
No.
He never gave us a different directive. That was the only one we got, and we stuck to it. Took us 26 years to be all the way done with all 5 of our children.
I was going to play, and that first child finally got through.
But we were very committed for 26 years, all the way through. And several of the next things we're going to talk about are challenges that we face too. The first one being we have a special needs child. Matthew is overcoming autism. We discovered that when he was about 3.
Mm-hmm.
And that meant for challenges, not just with educating him, but it meant challenges educating our other children because he was needing special attention. And the rest of them were already doing their schoolwork and they needed my attention also. Right. So it was a challenge to spread out that attention to
balance time.
Yeah, balance time.
And attention.
Yes, definitely. Now, to speak to the other children, they were very good. They love Matthew. In our family, we are a team. We do not come against the other one. We are working together to make everything happen. So where Matthew is concerned, everything is and everyone is on board to make things happen that need to happen for Matthew.
Yeah.
So that included containing him in the house. He was a runner, and so we had to when he was young, and so we had to make sure that he stayed in the house. The kids would feed him. They would, help him to get his clothes on. They would do all the different things that needed to happen for Matthew while they were doing their own stuff. And I was in the middle of all that also helping them. But our family was a team. We worked together to make sure everything Matthew needed got done. Then when he was finally ready, and he was not ready at age 4, and he was not ready at age 5, and he was not even ready at age 7. I think he was 8, maybe 9, before we actually started doing some schooling with him. Now, that doesn't mean he didn't learn before that age. It just means that there wasn't any formal doing things with him. He was learning by doing puzzles, by drawing, by working with magnets, he did all the tactile things when he was young. Yeah. And so anything that he would be interested in, we would capitalize on it and try to make him see a lesson in it or try to help him understand something more.
Which is challenging because Matthew's nonverbal.
Right. He's nonverbal, and he's about midway on the autism spectrum at this point. And so midway means that he mimics a lot. He doesn't have a lot of creative thought or action. It's all mimicking, and so that makes it difficult too. To even make sure that he is learning is kind of difficult. But knowing him, I know him. I know how he acts, how he responds, and we could all pray over him together. We could seek the Lord for anything that was challenging with him.
Yeah, absolutely.
We figured things out, and he began schooling when Abby, our youngest, began schooling. And so they learned ABCs together and the numbers together, and they learned words together, and they did all the basic things together. Yeah. Matthew, we took him as far as we could take him educationally, and then when he just wouldn't focus, or we couldn't get any farther with that, we focused on other things in his life, because learning is a life. Everything in your life is learning. And Matthew has learned some things all on his own. Matthew has learned things that we've taught him. Matthew has benefited from the homeschooling experience because he was here with people who love him, who know him, and were able to help him. So that's a challenge. That's a definite challenge if you have any kind of a special need. Our youngest daughter also had a special need. Once we got her started in school, we realized that she had a writing glitch. And so that means that information up here in her brain did not reach her hand down here when she went to write it. It just had a break somewhere. There was not a connection. And so we had to actually go online, learn some things from a doctor who specializes in that and who offers materials to help retrain your brain to be able to use your hand effectively in writing and putting it all together. And so we did that. We did the research. We had to be students. We did the research. We learned, and then we had to teach Abby, and she was able to reformulate that connection, put it back together, and then we started from scratch teaching her again how to do words and how to put them together in a sentence, and then how to make a paragraph, and then how to make a paper, and like an essay or whatever. So it was a process, but a special need that we needed to address and work through with her.
Yeah.
And she got specialized attention doing it.
She did.
So it was a challenge, and yet it was a benefit for her to be at home.
The main lesson learned with a special needs child is that you adapt your schooling and curriculum and time commitments to help them to most effectively learn.
Yes.
In wherever they're at. Whatever, if they're got a glitch or they're actually got like a Down syndrome or autism or Asperger's, you figure out a way to work with your child to help them get the most information they can retain and learn from, and you'll know them better than anybody else because you're there with them. Yeah. And so that's the most important thing, especially these child, is that you're adaptable and that you're flexible with them, because that's part of the challenge.
Sometimes the challenge is so great with that kind of a student that you might need help.
Yeah. You
might need maybe a program that offers some assistance in teaching, or you might need to do a lot of research on your own. Yeah. There's so much available on the internet now, and maybe just even if you feel like it's really necessary to take a class to learn some techniques that will help. There are lots of ways that you can do it and make sure that your special needs student gets the learning that they need. But it's challenging. Yeah. It's challenging, and you have to rise to the challenge. Another thing that I just thought of concerning, it's not really special needs, but learning, is that there is a challenge when you have a student who doesn't learn like all the others.
Right.
And so sometimes you have to figure out what the best method is for your student to learn. Some people learn auditory, and some people learn visually, and sometimes they need to touch and feel and put it together and handle it. But if you figure that out, then the challenge is easily met, because you can readjust how you teach. So sometimes the challenge is in how they learn.
Yeah.
We were also thinking about single families, single parents.
I'm going to jump in on that one for a second.
Okay, you go right ahead.
Single parenting and homeschooling is not a don't do it. Right. It is a definite challenge. But let me explain something to you. Homeschooling is not regular schooling. And because it's not regular schooling, it is something that you can do while you're at home around your own schedule. Right. So you have a work schedule, and they have a babysitter or whatever. They go to grandma and grandpa's, whatever they do. You don't have to school them during quote unquote normal school hours.
Right.
You can school them when you get home.
Right.
Because homeschooling isn't sitting at a desk for 8 hours and not learning anything. No. It's a more concentrated time frame that you take to learn. I'll liken it to where I went to college at. Where I went to college at was not a typical college. Most colleges have, semester classes and all that. We were in what they call concentrated education. So my classes were every day that I took, and we had quarters instead of semesters. It may be a semester class, but we did it in quarters. And so every day at 8 to 9:15 there's a class, 9:15 to 10 is a class. It just depends on how you stack your schedule. And so my schedule was one that was stacked whereby shortly after lunch, early afternoon, in college, my day was done as far as classwork. Because I played sports and did other things. I had tons of homework, and we would do that in the evening. But my actual class time was not as big and as long as even what my high school class time was, and I learned more in a shorter period of time because it was a concentrated curriculum. So you can do that with your child as a single parent. You can even, if your babysitter wants to help, or your it's grandma and grandpa or aunt and uncle, you can actually have them help you in the process. This is what they need to read today. This is not what they need to watch today. So homeschooling is not schooling at home. It's home schooling. So you can adapt your schedule and their education around your schedule.
Yes, exactly. No, I agree totally. Yes, absolutely.
So
definitely do that.
It's not. I'm a single parent. I can't do this. You can.
Yeah.
Challenge. We're talking about challenges. It's definitely challenging.
Yeah.
And your commitment level is going to be challenged on a daily to weekly basis.
Right.
But if you're willing to commit and do it, and ask God for supernatural strength in the process, I believe that He'll give you the grace and the strength to educate your child from home,
right,
in the way that you see fit, the way you see is right as a single parent.
Absolutely. Okay, so another challenge that some people have to wrap their brains around is that we live in a two-income family world, but homeschooling often means you have one income.
Yeah.
Or you have one and then somebody does something part-time or on the side. That's okay. It's fine. But the person teaching, especially if you have multiple children, needs time.
That's their job.
Be there. That's their job. But they're not going to necessarily get paid for it. So it's a challenge to dial your world down and value the homeschooling enough that you are willing to go without certain things because educating your children is the most important thing.
Right.
That has to be the mindset, that we are schooling our children, we are teaching our children and raising them up in the way they're supposed to go, and that takes precedence over everything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything else. We were not a family that had a bunch of vacations every year. That didn't happen for us because our money went into letting me be home and school our children.
And books, and lots more books.
Lots of books. We lived in the books. But we found good sales. You learn how to be thrifty. You learn how to find great deals everywhere. You learn how to dig through the Goodwill and find the good stuff that people pitched out. I don't know. But you just make it happen. God leads you.
Yeah.
God will show you how to make it all work. You just have to be the willing person to let that second income kind of go, at least for a while.
And if you'll do it as a sacrifice unto the Lord, He'll bring you extra. I tell people all the time that struggle with finances.
It's true.
All the time. So God's not limited to your paycheck.
Absolutely.
He's not limited to your exact income.
That's
God
right.
can do above and beyond that.
Right.
We've seen that in our own life because when we were pastoring a church, a little small church in West Texas, and Leslie was homeschooling, and I'm working at the church, and I'm getting paid not very much money, but in that season, God had people bring us food. He had people help pay for my they bought clothes. They paid for my gas in my car. We had people who just came and gave us cash. And we were going to a conference, and we had a lady in our church who just showed up and gave us an envelope full of cash. She's like, "Hey, Pastor, be blessed, have fun." And we're like, "You didn't have to do that. We just paid for it. It's okay." So we just
God has a way of helping you
and supplementing
and supplementing you. Yes, and so don't look at it as like the worst thing ever.
Yeah, right.
That's not it. It's an opportunity that you're going to allow God to pour into your life, because He can bring things to you that you didn't even expect, or He can bring things to you that you've prayed for and asked for. God is a good God. So if you're committed to His plan, then He will provide for what you're doing. So
and that kind of fits in with the single parents, because you are a one-income family. So that God can take care of that for you. Well, I got to work. I got to pay the bills. I got to do this. How am I supposed to buy all the books? Blah blah blah. God will take care of it. He'll provide. And it may feel tight. It may come in the last moment, or you may feel it's late, but it will be taken care of for you.
Right. Very challenging. We had a year when we schooled where he was in between places, jobs, and we just didn't have very much money. So for the first 5 months of that school year, we just pieced together everything we had to learn. We used what we had, and that maybe wasn't the best for that year, but we used what we had. God taught us and things along the way. The kids learned, and by the time we got to February, we kind of were on our last hurrah of finding things to learn, and it had been so challenging that Brian, as the principal of our school, said, "Okay, well, we're done for this year. it was March. You know, when we got to March, he says, we're just done. We're going to stop for this year. We're going to start fresh next year. And anything that we lacked in that year, we just picked it up in the next year. Yeah. So challenges have a way of working themselves out too.
And it did. They worked themselves out.
And that kind of goes along with family issues come up. Sometimes there's a sickness.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a money problem. Yeah. Sometimes there's a vehicle issue. I mean, there's all kinds of things that happen in life. And when those other things come up, they can challenge homeschooling.
Yeah.
But the commitment keeps you. And knowing that the Lord has called you to do it keeps you in line and keeps you in place through all of it. You find the way around those other challenges and issues to keep going and keep doing what you need to do.
Yeah, and one of the beauties of homeschooling, and this will be talked about more on the next podcast, is that it's adaptable.
Yes.
To those kind of challenges. So
yes.
If it's not like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get them to school? Take them downstairs, put them in a chair, by the table. Yep. If you have a task, that's cool
Read
too.
A book. It's
and
good.
School them.
Yeah. I think there was a time where we had someone who really doubted homeschooling, and we had an opportunity to spend some time with them during a week, and our kids came with us. And so in our family, schooling doesn't stop. We didn't even get snow days. I'm sorry, but it had to be a really good snow for anybody to get off. And
we might go play in the snow.
They do that after school. Yeah, they still had school. So so we had school no matter what. And when we were visiting this place, we brought our kids in, asked them if there was like a classroom or somewhere that they could sit at a table and so they could do their work. So we took them in, you know, got all their stuff out. They had brought all their school books, all their things they needed to learn that day. And we did all the things we would normally do together and separately. And then when that week was over, it changed the heart and the mind of that person that we were with for the good.
We were at a church conference, and we were there, and the host pastor actually had taught against homeschooling. Yeah. And so we didn't know that.
Because his only experience with homeschooling was for people to try to just get out of school.
To get out of school and really not do anything, and they abused the privilege of homeschooling. Yeah. And so he had literally taught from the pulpit and told people, don't you homeschool, it's a bad thing to do. And then after a week of watching us do what we do, he called me into his office. Said, can I have a minute of your time? And by then I learned that he didn't like homeschooling. He's like, this is not going to go well. And so I go in and go, sit down, son. So I sat down, and he's like, so this is how you homeschool. I said, pretty much. Well, if this is homeschooling, I'm for this. Yeah. I'm not against this. I'm for this. I said, well, what was your experience? And so he told me, and I understood why he was against it. I said, well, we're against that, but that's not homeschooling. That's just, being lazy. Right. And say, no, this is what homeschooling is. And the vast, vast majority of people who homeschool have this kind of commitment and do homeschooling probably better than what we're seeing from us. Yeah. We're probably not even the best example. Yeah. And he's like, well, you've changed my mind in less than a week, and that's hard to do. And so he started encouraging people and actually sending them to us with questions after that. So it's just adapting to your circumstance, the situation where you're at.
Challenges they come from people that you love and respect a lot. Grandparents who don't understand, great-grandparents who don't understand.
Yeah, Leslie, grandma, who we love dearly, and she's since passed away, but she's an amazing woman, and she's such a kind and generous lady. But she was like, well, when are you going to put these kids in school? Yeah. Well, they're in school. But when are they going to go to real school? They are going to school. And they are learning.
So the challenge came from somebody that we really love and who loved us, and she wanted the best for everybody, but she didn't understand what the best was anymore. And so
didn't understand that concept.
Didn't understand the concept.
My side of the family, they all thought we were crazy. My dad had like, well, this ain't gonna work, blah 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 blah, and I'm like, well, this is what we're gonna do. And when my oldest hit a certain age, and my dad saw some of the other grandchildren acting certain ways at that point, I probably should put this out there, but I want to. He called me and says, looks like you guys did it right. So, huge compliment coming from my father. And I don't think he really put anybody else down. He was just saying the fruit of our labor was being seen. Yeah. And he's like, wow, That's more impressive than we
Mm-hmm.
thought.
Yeah.
So you may have siblings, parents, grandparents, close friends, co-workers who really will try to challenge your thought process as to why you're homeschooling your children, and they may look down at you or talk to you in ways that you know that it's disdainful, and they're not really for what you're doing. But until they pay my bills, until they raise my kids, I don't give them free rent in my brain, and so they don't get to tell me what I'm going to do. Plus, we had a conviction, we had a commitment, we had a mandate from God, and you can't take that away.
Nope.
I don't care who you are, what your background is, right?
Absolutely.
All right. We'll get off that horse for a minute. We got two other things we want to talk about real quick. Just got a few minutes. I want to talk about first choosing curriculum. Can be very challenging. Goes back to what Leslie talked about a few minutes ago about learning styles and how children learn, because there are curriculums geared toward people who learn through auditory, through just listening. There are curriculum there for visual learners. There's curriculum there for kinesthetic or hands-on learners, and some that blend all of that. And so you have to learn how to do that. Some of them have a lot of reading. Some of them have a lot of listening. Some of them have a lot of actual do this little bit and then you do this other part. And you have to learn what works. The whole idea of homeschooling is setting your children up to succeed, not fail. You're putting them in a position that they will learn in the way that God made them to learn, and so they can learn the most in the least amount of time. And so choosing curriculum can be a challenge because we have 5 children, so maybe 2 of them learn one way and 3 learn another way. Well, how do you do that and blend the curriculum for everybody, especially if they're going to use some of the same stuff and study together in certain areas? You have to, so it's challenging. The curriculum part is challenging. I kind of left that in Leslie's hands, so she would go through and research and look at and narrow it down to a few things, and then we would get together and she would get my input on where we go from here. So cost was a factor.
Also time consuming. That is absolutely really a factor. If there are some curriculums that take you prepping tons, and if you don't have time to do that, if you have a really large family, if you've got a second, you have a job or a part-time thing that you're doing, you don't have a lot of time, you don't want to do that curriculum because you won't be able to get it prepared. Then there's some that come fully done for you and you just plug in and do it, So it's just really important to know what curriculum you're looking at and know who the people are, who are your children, what are they needing, and what works with them. I did have a curriculum that I bought even when our oldest son was in high school. I was sure he was going to be able to do this curriculum. And when we got it, it did not work for him at all. Not at all. And I think it was because all the years prior, he had 2 sisters ahead of him who did this majority of their curriculum together, and it motivated him and helped him to do it. But when he had to do it by himself, it did not work at all. And so we had to shift gears halfway through the year and switch curriculum, and because it did not come out the way I thought it was going to come out. So even knowing him, sometimes it's challenging to get the right one, but it's doable, and there's tons of stuff out there to use anymore. When we first started, there was very little available, but now it's like there's something on every corner.
It's almost overwhelming.
It's almost overwhelming. And now you have to search for the stuff that is actually geared at homeschooling, not just here, do your school at home. It's different. We're not just doing the subjects at home. You're living a lifestyle of learning with your children and growing and becoming, and it's interactive and hands-on and sharing, and it's a whole different animal. So make sure what you're choosing is actually aimed at what you're trying to accomplish in your home.
And the last thing, I say this last on purpose. We only have a couple of minutes. We're actually going to go over, but I don't care. It's the learning curve for you as a teacher, because what you hear a lot from public school and private school educators is, well, you're not a trained educator. You don't have a degree in blah, blah, blah. And so I don't disagree. I don't have a degree in that. However, I know my child better than you do. And there's a learning curve for you as a teacher, because you have to learn how to teach. You have to learn how your child learns, and do that. And I'll say this: I actually did substitute teaching in a remote area in West Texas when I was pastoring a church down there, and when they went to hire me, like, I don't have a teacher's degree. Like, we don't care. They just needed a warm body to watch kids. And I did things with some of the students that the quote unquote trained educators would call me and say, what did you do to get that student to do this? It's called common sense, which isn't so common anymore. And I'll give you a quick example. Had a young man at elementary, probably 3rd grade, 4th grade, and this kid came to school not to do education. Ever been around that? I was one of those kids. So I kind of got him. I'm watching. He was there because he wanted to socialize with his friends. Which was totally cool, except I needed him to get his work done. So he was walking from desk to desk, wasn't getting his work done. So finally I had him come up to my desk, and I'm like, let me cut a deal with you. He said, kind of looked at me, and he's like, what? So I'm going to cut a deal with you. If you'll get, we had so much time for each topic. It was an all day. They were in my classroom all day except for recess and lunch. And so I said, in this time period here, if you'll get the math done, or you get the science done, or whatever the topic we were saying, if you'll get it done, because he's super smart. So if you'll get that done, then I will allow you to go talk to your friends from desk to desk as long as their work was done. Or you can help them get their work done, because the teacher said they could share and get their work done. So you can either help them, and if they're done, you can just sit and have a conversation. But only until the next topic time comes up, and then we start all over again. And he's like, really? And I stuck my hand out, and we did a gentleman's handshake, and that kid got every single thing done that day. His teacher, it was on a Friday, his teacher calls me on Monday. What did you do? Told her what I did. She's like, why didn't I think of that? And I didn't say anything. I let it go. I'm thinking, because their education didn't train them to work with some kid who doesn't fit in the mold, in the niche of how they're taught how to do that. So the learning curve isn't as bad as you think it is. And you are qualified as their parent to teach them.
The other thing to remember in if you're self-doubting about being a teacher, the other thing to remember is you start them young. You're teaching them A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. I mean, like, you can do that. You're teaching them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You are teaching.
Oh, you got me after 9.
I know, right? Really basic. And the thing is that you are going to grow up through the levels with them.
Right.
So whatever you are doing, you're going to work yourself into the next thing.
Yes.
And if you don't remember how to do something from your own schooling, or you never learned something from your own schooling, because my sister will tell you as a homeschool mom, she learned things she never learned when she was in school. And it was because it wasn't the right style for her either.
Right.
And she didn't retain any, if they did do it, she didn't retain it whatsoever. And so you learn it as you go with them. You obtain new skills while they're obtaining new skills. You understand better, probably, because you're doing it with them and learning it with them. So it's not a game killer to not be a teacher.
It's just not.
It's not. You can do it.
Yes, you can.
You can do it.
So we're going to stop there because we're over time a little bit. But we want you to know there are challenges that come with homeschooling, but not one of them are something that's not something you can overcome.
Right.
It's not something that should be a stopper for you on homeschooling. So those, and we probably didn't hit all of them, and we probably didn't go into detail all the way through with some of them that we could have more detail. So if you want more detail, you want more information, be sure to email us at Fatherees@gmail.com with your homeschooling questions. If you're teeter-tottering, like, I want to, don't want to, and you just want to have some input. We're not going to try to talk you into something you don't want to do, but we will give you some good information. So if you have a specific question and a specific need in regards to that, let us know. Or if you're homeschooling and you're struggling with it and you're like, I'm doing this, but this isn't working, what would you do? How would you do it? We would be glad to answer those questions. So get a hold of us. Again, it's Fathery Family Ministries @gmail.com. Fathery is spelled father with 2 E's on the end. F as in Frank. ATHEREE. Family Ministries @gmail.com. With that said, No shameless plug, because that's as close as it gets today. We'll do a shameless plug on the next broadcast episode of the Unbreakable podcast. Thank you for hanging out with us today. We love you. We're praying for you, and we're believing God's best for you and for your children.
Yes.
So we want to see you do well. So we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.